From Lagos to even the most remote parts of Ethiopia, the demand for mobile phones in Africa is evident. The continent leads the world in non-bank payments using mobile phones, and Sub-Saharan Africa is the fastest growing region globally in terms of mobile subscribers. This demand for mobiles has risen alongside Africa's economic output and growing middle class. Between 2010 and 2020, 9 out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world will be from Africa, according to the IMF. And this year, Africa is set to receive a record level of foreign investment, with FDI flows into technology, media, and telecoms increasing steadily in the last decade. With the continent's population predicted to double to 2.4 billion by 2050 and swaths of rural areas still without established telecoms infrastructure, there is ample opportunity for investment. Roughly 2/3 of Sub-Saharan Africa is still without a mobile subscription. But there are also many obstacles, including national power shortages, and these are shaping how companies can operate there. Our telecoms correspondent Dan Thomas explains.
There are plenty of difficulties for companies reaching customers in Africa. Providing the infrastructure to such a vast place clearly has its own problems in terms of costs. For example, there are diesel generators which need to be maintained, and just protecting the masts from any harm or wrongdoing.
Given the challenges of meeting the demand to provide infrastructure in Africa's rural territories, companies are increasingly considering consolidating to maximize the profitability of their operations. This year, Goldman Sachs was part of a $490 million capital raising deal by Lagos-based IHS Towers, the continent's biggest mobile infrastructure company.
To share or not to share? That's really the question facing telecom operators in Kenya and across the continent. It's all about these telecom towers. When companies come together, it means they can increase rollout beyond the cities into the rural parts of the country, but it also means losing control.
There's a distinct trend towards consolidation of networks. Companies such as IHS, Helios can go and buy masts from the operators. They can combine them so everyone can share a single network or single set of masts and infrastructure, and then share the costs. It makes sense in very large countries where the infrastructure needs to be spread out and can be costly because of that. It can also make sense in more mature markets like Nigeria, where the regulator has given out a number of licenses, and it means the competition is very high and they're struggling to make their profits as well.
But not everyone is convinced that this business model works, including Safaricom, Kenya's biggest telecoms operator.
If a tower company comes and buys up my infrastructure, it really only makes sense if you can get other people to get onto that infrastructure. Because otherwise, you'll be running it as inefficiently as we are, if you know what I mean. They speculate that when they buy someone's tower, they will be able to get other tenants, and typically they need to get between 2 and 3 tenants on. So whilst there's been a lot of talk about it, there's been very few real success stories on towers. But it's working for some people. So you've got people like Eaton and Helios and those guys who are making some inroads in some countries.
The type of investors vary. Analysts say investors in Africa's mobile space mostly consist of listed multinational companies, including Orange, Vodafone, India's Bharti Airtel, and the Emirates Etisalat. Whereas in the tower sector, only a handful of players backed by private equity funds and institutions dominate. Marco Cordoni from Analysis Mason explains where he thinks the biggest opportunities are.
The investment opportunity in Africa in the telecom space at the moment, in my view, derives mostly from further investment in the tower space. This is a market typically open to large private equity funds and institutional investors because they require a high degree of investment. On the other hand, the mobile space is less interesting at the moment because it's already quite well dominated by large groups. While in the broadband and data space, I think there will be opportunity for a combination of local retail investors and possibly private equity funds.
While foreign investment in telecoms infrastructure is dominated by private equity-backed companies, there's also a more direct route for retail investors through listed companies.
Our company, we have shifted from being at listing 15% of the free float was in foreign investors' hands. Today it's more than 52%. So that has shown a marked interest in coming into the emerging markets and actually coming into the telecom sector. And we're a big player, actually one of the very few listed companies in the emerging markets. So the money's been coming in here. And I think that shows a confidence in the sector.
There's no doubt that mobile penetration in Africa has grown hugely in the last decade. And that demand is creating opportunities for investors to buy infrastructure across the vast continent. Although analysts are estimating there will be $10 billion of tower and outsourcing deals in Africa in the next 3 years, the model of buying telecoms towers to lease them is still relatively unproven. Investing in telecoms infrastructure in Africa comes with high risks and potentially high returns, but it is still very much frontier territory.